I'm Sean. I lead the product team here at Census, and my goal today is sort of twofold: to talk about some of the developments that we've been seeing with our customers who are spending their time in the marketing world, specifically how the worlds of data and marketing are evolving, and some of the interesting new trends that we're seeing there. We're really going to get into this concept of a composable CDP. I know that lands for a couple of folks in the audience. So I may be kind of preaching to the choir for a few of you, but it's a relatively new one, and I'm really excited about it. It's very interesting to see it developing. So I'm going to give some context on that. My goal here is then to switch over to Census and show you some of the things that we've been building and launching over the past couple of months beyond our kind of original reverse ETL starting point that enable this kind of core CDP use case vision specifically for marketing teams. So I'll show you what that looks like in Census today. There's a lot here that we've launched recently. So hopefully something for everybody, even for our new users. And then sticking around for some Q&A on these sorts of topics as well. I am definitely seeing a fair number of existing Census customers here in the audience today, which is great. It feels like I'm amongst friends. So the only thing that I'll say on this front is we're going to get into this in kind of the general worldview here today, but if you'd like to dive into any of the content that we're talking through today, sort of specific for your organization or company, or what you've got planned for 2023, reach out to your CSM and let us know. We'd love to come in and talk about what composable CDP means and could mean for your company in different ways you could apply the techniques and the tools that we're going to go over today. So with that, I'm going to jump in. I'll keep an eye on the chat, but if you've got anything that's really urgent, flag Katie. She'll flag it for me as well, so I can stop my rambling and jump on. So quick high-level overview on Census. So we are a data activation platform. Operational analytics is another word that we've used here. Reverse ETL is another one before that. Really, the thing that makes us different from much of kind of the data integration and activation products that existed in the past is that we layer on top of a data warehouse. That was our primary perspective, our worldview. This is where we started when we got started back in 2018. And at the time, this was a kind of a crazy notion that you would pull data out of a data warehouse and use that. Literally, people were calling us crazy, but now we have we work with hundreds of customers across sort of media, retail, e-commerce, in addition to a lot of the SaaS or PLG-based companies that we started with. Surprising number of Australian companies representing in my logo slides today. I think it's like 4 a.m. Sydney time, so I don't know if we have as many of them in the audience, but who knows, maybe they'll stop by. That's Census where we started, really activating data to any of your business tools. But one of the things that we've seen over especially the last couple of years is that marketing has been one of the organizations or the teams inside a company most primed, ready to adopt a lot of these tools to get started with it. So we've seen a lot of pull, both in terms of supporting marketing destinations, but just greater understanding of support for those marketing workflows. And so when we talk with marketing teams, we get a lot of the same challenges, even across the various different industries that we work with. How do we coordinate campaigns? How do we know if they're successful? How do we determine if customers are coming back or if they're not coming back? What are our costs associated with this? And a lot of these problems ultimately boil down to marketers having all of their data in one spot. That sort of mythical source of truth shows up for the majority of marketers as one of their key challenges for rolling out data. When we started Census, we were really starting with this sort of perspective of your great first-party data, the data that you can use to activate those campaigns, to measure the success of those campaigns, are in one spot. You've already got access to them. You've moved them into the cloud data warehouse, but you need them in order to make use of them to activate them in the end destination tools, your email marketing systems, the advertising destinations, et cetera. And getting that first party data connected into that tool ended up being a lot of this, a lot of requests back and forth of, hey, data team, can you export this CSV? Can you send it over? I need it now. I need it yesterday. And that process takes a while. And by the time you're ready to go, by the time that data is ready to go, maybe that campaign isn't as important anymore. And that disconnect, that back and forth approval, P0 overdue process just really reduces the agency of the marketing teams. It reduces your ability to experiment. And so one of our very core goals at Census was to enable or give the data team the ability to enable the rest of the business to make decisions for themselves, to move fast, to experiment and learn and iterate over time, not really treat these as large projects that need to sort of task manage in order to get done correctly. Now, this data access problem has existed for a while. And so this is where this kind of concept of a customer data platform, or CDP, kind of came into fruition. The term's maybe 10, 15 years old at this point. There's a number of products in this space, especially if you're deep in the marketing stack, you're probably familiar with a number of them. And they solve a very similar problem, right? Their approach is to collect a lot of data, dump it into a central spot, and then give you the ability to sort of control, generate insights over it, and broadcast that out to a number of destinations. It's really solving a very similar goal to what Census is doing with your data warehouse. But what we've seen with companies is that this CDP ends up representing really another duplicate of your data. You're spending a lot of time replicating the same data from your apps into your CDP and out to destinations, and then also in your data lakehouse or your data warehouse out to destinations as well. And as soon as you have two data, you're paying for them twice, you're trying to keep them in sync, you're running into the, why don't these numbers match up? That's sort of problem we see over and over with CDPs. And they are siloed. You have one sort of specific particular worldview on how to do identity resolution, the sets of data sources, the sets of destinations. Admittedly, there's a lot of products in this space, so you can probably find the one that works for you, but you're still dealing with a completely isolated set, a path of roughly, at the end of the day, the same data, the same customer data, right? So what we're seeing sort of develop in the market now is this concept of a composable CDP. And really what that means is, hey, the concepts, the problems that a CDP was trying to solve is great. They're important, they matter, they really are valuable in terms of enabling the marketing team to do their job or get the most out of their data. But I don't necessarily need a completely separate duplicate copy of the data in order to accomplish that. I can actually do that on top of a single space, a single data warehouse. And I can benefit from the fact that that ecosystem is open. I can pull in a number of different products in this space in order to kind of accomplish the same thing. So on the data collection side, I can combine data, not just the event stream data, but also any of the batch data coming out of my applications by using an ELT tool like Fivetran or something along those lines. So I can combine data streams from Fivetran and Snowplow and even custom built data streams loading into my data warehouse. The set of data that I'm dealing with at this point can be completely arbitrary, right? It's not just customers. It can be customers and events and companies and their invoices or subscriptions. The set of kind of the nouns or data that matters for your business isn't stuck and dictated by the CDP. It's dictated by whatever your data team can build and transform. And that's where tools like dbt to enable the transformation really give you a ton of power. And then on the activation side, this is really where Census spends all of our time, or has historically spent all of our time, is getting that data out of the warehouse and into those destination tools really quickly in a self-serve way so that your business teams can take access of this. And we're seeing a lot of interest and traction, even with our existing customers sort of adopting these types of patterns. And this is kind of the primary motivator, or these are the primary motivators behind this. So first of all, we get back to having a single source of truth. All of that data my marketing, my sales, et cetera, are all driven off the same core data set. My data team can apply all of the same governance, all of the same observability, all of the same reporting diligence on top of that data in one spot. I don't have to worry about two numbers drifting or having different data sets or anything like that. And I certainly don't have to worry about any of the additional sort of compliance issues when it comes with dealing with PII for sensitive customer data. The second one, as I mentioned, is really flexibility. How you ingest data is entirely up to you. How you transform that data is entirely up to you. How you're doing identity resolution, data cleaning, data quality testing, all of that is under your control. You're not beholden to sort of fitting your business into a particular model. So if you look like a marketplace and you have buyers and sellers, you have the flexibility to express the entities that matter for you. And additionally, you're future-proofing your stack. If that CDP or that company goes in a specific direction or starts working on specific connectors that you're not interested, you're not stuck. You can easily migrate to additional tools. You can add data. If you're interested in machine learning, that's something that can plug in very nicely into your SQL ecosystem and kind of expand. That's really the composable part of the CDP. The pattern of the customer data platform is the right one, but how do you bring that under your control? How do you make that work for your particular business? And we really think this pattern is working. The types of use cases look very similar for marketing use cases, right? But this is all under the sort of the data inputs that you have. So that's syncing all of your customer data to build a 360. That's building lookalike audiences, offline conversions, ad retargeting. All of that data can then be pushed into those destinations, but in a really timely way, in a self-serve way that enables your business to do what they need to do. And we're seeing success with our customers today. So Canva is one of the logos that we mentioned here earlier. It's doing omnichannel personalization for more than 100 million users. Bleach London had a huge reduction in terms of their cost per action by driving better targeting on Facebook ads, just through the transformation that they were already doing in their data warehouse, leveraging the work that data team was already doing. And if you'd like to learn more about specifically one of these use cases, I'm actually going to be chatting with our friend Matt over at Canva, as well as Snowflake and Fivetran roughly this time next week, I guess. Yeah, about midweek next week, Thursday. So if you didn't get enough of this, you can come and join the conversation next Thursday, where we'll be going into the details of specifically how this works at Canva. And with their particular data stack, I think it's going to be a really interesting conversation. So please come by and join that one. In the meantime, though, I want to switch over and show you some of the things that we've built in Census over the last couple of months that really start to make this composable CDP dream much more of a reality and much easier for you to manage. There's a number of different concepts that I'm going to get into here. That are pretty cool. So I'm going to switch over to the Census side of the world. And I'm going to go through a demo of creating a fancy new segment and some of the inputs into that, and then syncing that over so you can see a little bit of what that use case looks like inside Census here. Just quickly, how are we doing on time? Cool. Okay. All right. So far, so good. We should still have some time for questions. You may already be familiar with the segment builder inside Census today. So the segment builder, the way that it works is I can point and click, add some Boolean conditions. We've got a number of different things that we've added to the UI here. I won't go through all of them yet, but there's one really important one here. And it's the difference between this kind of white section and this little blue section here. The really interesting thing that we've now shipped is the ability to define segments across relationships in your data warehouse. So you don't have to have all of your data flattened into a single table. You can actually define how data is related, and then I'll open that up to your business and your marketing teams to kind of use or consume that and build the segments that matter to them without having to sort of pre-compute all of the aggregations, all of the potential calculations here. So I've got some properties about my user, And I've got some properties or some filters on the events that they've triggered or they've interacted with that I can filter on. That's really cool. But in order to set that up, what Census needs to know first is how your data is laid out and data is related. So I'm going to step back before we get into the segments and talk a little bit about how we think of the data team and their responsibility for setting up the rest of the business for success. So I'm going to switch over to our entities tab. Now, inside a typical data warehouse, especially a data warehouse that you've got plugged into with, say, dbt or something like that, you're going to have thousands, tens of thousands of tables and views and dbt models layered on top of that. And as a data professional, you understand that the vast majority of those, most people shouldn't be touching directly unless they're really trying to do something specific. You can think of entities as Census as doing two things. The first thing is really focusing your business teams, your marketing teams on these are the data sets that matter most. This is where you should start. If you're doing segmentation, these are the important parts. I kind of think about this as sort of favoriting or bookmarking the entities that you've got in your data warehouse. I've got two here in this case. So I've got my users and my app events, the ones that I was setting up before. I'm actually just going to quickly show you the process of defining an entity and the relationships between them here. So I've got my users, app events. I want to add companies to my graph here so that I can do filtering both on the events of those users and the companies that they're related to. So I've got a bunch of data. Let's find my teams is my internal name for them, but that's not how everybody understands it. So I'm going to rename that as companies. This is a company data type. Data types in Census mean a couple of different things. We use this as a hint to show different UIs for different parts of Census. You'll see that when we look at events again here in a second, but I'm going to leave this one for a company data type or an organization data type for now. I've got an ID for my company, and I'm going to go ahead and create that relationship as well from companies to users. So I've got my company's users here, got an ID, and this should have, I think, a team ID on it. Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. This relationship really unlocks a lot of power on the segmentation side. It's something that outside of a data warehouse within the SQL ecosystem, we take for granted that this exists, but inside the data warehouse, a lot of these definitions are not set up. They're not really hinted to Census at all. So giving Census the understanding that companies are related to users means that we can then start building segments that span users and companies, and I can actually do segmentation across both of those things. So let's go take a look at what that process looks like now. All right, I'm going to add a segment. I'm going to switch over. Actually, I want to add a segment to my users here. So let's add some properties to my users. Let's say that their email is not blank, and I don't know, they were created less than, say, 90 days ago or something like that. You'll see my estimated size here updating as I'm going along. So I'm playing with my audience. I can also now add conditions based on those other relationships. So there's my app events one that I can drop in here. I can also say companies, active user count is greater than 10. So there's actually a reasonable number of users in the organization here. And you can see my size updating as I'm going along too. This underneath the covers is just SQL. You can hit the View SQL button and see. You can see the join that's happening automatically as a result of the relationship that I've mentioned or we just set up. And I'll show off just a little kind of bonus mode feature here. If you really want to, you can always jump into SQL. Think of this as like an Excel formula or something like that. It's not really something that most teams will need, but if you want to just add that additional little specific value you want to pull in a particular SQL function, you always have that access here. So these are point and click. They're very easy to set up, start using and syncing, but I can also get in here and get into the details if I need to just do something really, really sort of refined in terms of creating segments. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. on this. My new segment. That's good enough for now. I'm going to go back for a second because I want to show off one additional feature in addition to actually setting up my segment definitions here. You'll also see that Census will now track the size of that segment over time. So if it changes, you will be able to see how that segment is changing over time, even if you're not syncing that segment into a destination. So this lets you track the health of a segment as things are changing, as you are making changes, as you are changing the definition of your segment, et cetera. You can kind of see how that segment size is moving around. I don't have that obviously for the one that I just set up because it's brand new, so it doesn't have anything interesting. It is that size, but it is what it is. So I've got my segment here. I'm going to quickly switch over and sync it. Now, one of the things that we're really trying to enable with Census is making it as easy as possible for you to take the segments that you're defining in Census and broadcast them out to a number of destinations. Really, one of the core benefits of doing segmentation on the warehouse is that you are, again, defining that definition once that you can reuse across services, rather than pushing the data out to those destinations and then having to define the configuration or the SQL or the Boolean logic for that segment on each of those, trying to keep them in sync and that sort of thing. Instead, you can define it once and make sure that it's being updated to all of those destinations quickly. So with that in mind, our goal here is to make it as easy as possible for you to just boop, 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 click and send these off to all of your destinations at once. And so now with Census, particularly with segments, you'll be able to see what we call quick syncs, which will use a sync that you've already previously created as a template for a new sync. So we're just going to copy the fields. We're going to replicate the settings that you've used before, so you don't have to go through the full definition again when you're setting up a sync of all the fields and all the configurations and all the mappings. So I've got this now syncing over to Salesforce Marketing Cloud, to Facebook. I'm going to take a quick look at the Facebook one and just confirm, yep, great, email, first name, last name is all I want to send here in this case. And I'm going to run this. What this will actually do is create the new audience with the name of the segment that I just created in Census as well. So this, again, is sort of pushing that segment definition all the ways down into the destinations. It's going to go off to Facebook here, so it's going to run in a minute once it's finished unloading. As always, if you haven't seen it before, you have the history of sync. I'm only sending over 110 records on this one. You have all of the history of the actual sync configuration, and you can see the API calls underneath the covers if you need to get a detail of sort of what's going on to the destinations for those real debugging cases. But I think if I refresh my demo environment here, I should see that new segment was created in the destination. Great. And same for all of the other destinations that I'm pushing that off to. I'll get my new segment for whatever the appropriate, audience or static list representation is for those destinations, whether that's ads or marketing, etc. So that's the very high level view of some of the things we've been working on to enable that composable CDP. We're still sitting on top of the data warehouse. We're still plugging into the transformation and the data work that the data team is doing. Entities make that even easier to expose and get the rest of the business pointed at the right data. And then segmentation, especially across relationships now, really unlocks a lot of power of sort of point and click without SQL, but you could use a little SQL if you wanted, segment definition, and then quickly getting that off to the destination.